Alright, hi everyone. So welcome to 10-minute tutorials. Today I'm going to be going over crow pose. So I'll go over some exercises that help with crow pose and also show you how you can work on it using a block or a step at home. So the first exercise that helps prepare you for crow pose is actually on your back. So I'm going to come to my yoga mat. Lie on my back, and then you'll notice my low back wants to lift off of the mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press my feet into the mat, seal the low back down, and then draw the knees into the chest. And so I'm going to squeeze everything in, and then I'm going to try to let go of my shins, but keep the knees as close to the chest as possible. Good. From here, if you want to reach your arms straight up, sort of emulating crow pose but on your back, you can try to draw the knees in towards the triceps. So you're just lifting the tailbone off of the mat, keeping the shoulders down, drawing everything in, pressing knees into triceps, triceps into knees, really working the lower abdominals, and then lowering down. Good. Another way you can work on this action is also by doing this seated. So you'll sit tall, you're going to bring your knees into your armpits, and then you're going to sort of round and try to lift the toes off the mat. Press the knees into the arms into the knees, and keep pressing the hands forward. So I'm really pressing knees into arms, arms into knees, working through the core, hugging the tops of my thighs as close to the body as possible. So that's a few ways that you can work on the core muscles that you use in crow pose. Another thing that's really important to crow pose is shoulder protraction. So in crow, you're really rounding through the upper back. That shoulder protraction, you're moving the shoulder blades away from one another, creating more space between the scapula. So what that looks like is just like our cat pose. When we round through the spine and draw the tailbone down to tuck, scoop up through the low belly, soften through the front lower ribs. Good. My fingers are spread nice and wide. Now you can practice strengthening your shoulder protracting muscles by just taking cat pose, tucking the toes and hovering the knees an inch or so off the mat. Try not to shift the weight back and try not to collapse in the shoulders. Another exercise you can do to strengthen these muscles and the hip flexors, drawing the knees into the chest, is just coming from down dog, inhaling the right leg high, and then bringing the knees high up on the right tricep as possible. Inhale, right leg high. Exhale, knee to nose. Notice how my upper back is rounding, just like we did in cat pose. I'm trying to create more space between my heart and the mat. And then inhale, right leg high. And then make sure, of course, to do the other side. So inhale, left leg high. Exhale, knee to tricep. Shoulders come over the wrist. Inhale, left leg high. Exhale, knee to nose. Round forward. So again, I'm trying to create as much space between my chest and the mat as possible, drawing the front of my left thigh up towards my chest. Inhale, left leg high. Exhale, downward facing dog. Good. Finally, in chaturanga, we are shifting our weight forward in space so that the elbows stack over the wrists. Our gaze is going in the direction of our crow pose. So I like the analogy of it's like driving a car. You want to have your gaze or eyes on the road where you're headed. You don't want to be looking behind you as you're driving forward. So it's the same thing with crow pose. If you're looking down at the mat or back at your feet, you're going to go down or you're going to fall backwards. So a great way to practice feeling more comfortable with that shifting of weight forward in space is just to strengthen your chaturanga dandasana. So a lot of times in chaturanga, our elbows like to fall behind the wrists. So practicing shifting some weight forward. And you can rock forward and back in your plank, trying not to collapse in the shoulders. Eventually shifting enough forward so that when you lower halfway, the elbows are over the wrists, your gaze is slightly forward. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, down dog. So you're practicing getting the elbow to stack over the wrist in your chaturanga. Your gaze will be moving forward where you're going. Okay, so I'm gonna break down crow pose first without any props, and then I'm gonna show you a way that you can use a block or a stair step to help you as you're just getting comfortable with the pose. So there's a lot of different ways to come into crow pose. Not right or wrong, there's just different. The way that I like to approach this one is starting standing. So sometimes people will come in all the way from Malasana. I like to start with my hips a little bit higher. So I'm gonna plant my hands about 6 inches in front of my feet. It'll vary depending on your height. You just want to be able to lift your heels and bring the knees as close to in the armpits as possible and have your torso on your thighs. My fingers are spread nice and wide. And then I'm gonna gaze forward. So I'm gazing where I'm gonna be shifting. I'm not gazing down, I'm not gazing back. Now from here, I'm gonna start to shift my weight forward. As I do so, I'm tracking my knees down on the backs of my triceps. I notice that my upper back is slightly rounded here, like we practice. Now from here, a good exercise is just practicing walking your crow, lifting one toe, then the other. And then eventually working up towards both heels towards your glutes. And sometimes finding that sweet spot on the tricep just takes a little bit of practice and time. It can feel kind of funny at first. For some of us, having that much weight high in our arms is going to be more challenging. So you can always start with your knees a little bit closer to the elbows so that your femur or your thigh bone stacks over your forearm. And that's actually how, if you're working on one-legged crow, it's a good place to start because there's less weight in the upper half of your body. So in this variation, I'll bring my knees on top of my elbows. And you'll notice in doing so, my arms make more of a chaturanga shape, so I can get lower with my chest. And this way, my thighs are stacked on top of my elbows. And it makes it easier to maybe transfer weight into one leg. And maybe extend. Finally, before I do the block variation, if you're working on crane pose, a little trick that has been really helpful for me, I have more wrist pain going into crane from bent elbows and then pressing the arms straight. So one thing that I learned once in a workshop, which I thought was really helpful, was just coming into crane pose with your arms already straight. So not starting with the bent elbows and then trying to lock them out with the weight on the arms. So if you're working on crane, maybe try keeping the arms straight, lifting the knees onto the triceps, and then just shifting the weight forward. Okay, so I don't have a block today, but I thought I would show you guys, if you don't have blocks, another alternative. So if you have a step at home, you can use that in place of a block. So I'm gonna show you crow on the steps. So for a lot of people, it can be scary shifting the weight forward. You feel like you're gonna fall on your face, and that's not a fun feeling. And a lot of times our elbows are just too far back behind our wrists. So one way that you can practice with a little extra stability is starting with your feet together on a block or your step. So you already have that height. you'll plant your hands and you'll start to shift the weight forward. And then you'll notice I'm already in crow pose. I just have some support under my feet. You might practice finding a little hover and then bringing the toes back down, but you're still in crow pose. You're all lined up. You just have this extra support here. You can also have blocks underneath the forehead to catch you, or maybe a sofa. If you have like a couch, you can have that to support your head from falling forward. But if you really feel like you're gonna fall, rather than nose diving, you can practice the art of falling. So if you feel like you're gonna fall, a great exit strategy is to just let the knees come out to the sides, because you're not that high off the ground. It's all about just practicing your strategy. So, hope that was helpful. It is 10:11, we are up on time. But if you have any extra questions, just DM me or email me. Have a good day.